First half of February 1942. Is it better to freeze, starve, or be bombed? How about all three? That's what faces the population of Leningrad in the cold winter of 1941-42. This is War Against Humanity, a sub-series of World War II in real time. I'm Spartacus Olsson. In the last weeks of January, we saw how the FBO, the first Jewish resistance organization to be founded in one of the ghettos, was established in Vilnius, how a group of Nazi officials and German bureaucrats met in Wannsee to discuss and streamline the continuation of the Holocaust, and how Hitler addressed the German nation on the 30th, declaring that it is all or nothing in his war on Jews, setting the world on the path to total war. The speech that Hitler gives may only be words at this point, and the Nazis have become experts in twisting reality into a narrative of falsehoods and dogma, explicitly primed to manipulate the masses. They've shown time and time again that we should take them at their word, though. So you have to wonder if they believe their own lies. The answer is, at least to some degree, no. The master of indoctrination himself, Reichspropaganda-Minister Joseph Goebbels, will leave behind a pretty extensive diary in which he clearly exposes the cynicism with which the Nazis rule. Regarding the liquidation of mental patients and other undesirables, Goebbels writes on the last day of January how his new propaganda film has to legitimize these practices to the public. Under no circumstances should the film be made from a medical scientific perspective. This is what the leader of the old T4 program Bohler's people want. But the story should be told in black and white terminology, otherwise the people will never be persuaded. Goebbels also writes of the appointment of Norwegian politician Vidkun Quisling as Prime Minister on February 1st. Quisling's appointment as premier has created a sensation in the countries at war with us and has drawn in its wake great waves of angry commentary. Quisling is hated violently in the entire enemy world and is now the target for vile calumniation. He has actually succeeded in becoming a symbol, although he doesn't really deserve it. But the more he's attacked abroad, the more it becomes our duty to support him. I therefore gave the German press instructions to give his appointment a good build-up and to see to it that, with us at least, he receives favorable publicity. On the other hand, I forbid using the word Führer in the German press when applied to Quisling, even if he calls himself Führer in Norway. I, nevertheless, don't consider it right that the term Führer be applied to any other person than the Führer himself. There are certain terms that we must absolutely reserve to ourselves, among them also the word Reich. We must not tolerate that any other state is to call its confines a Reich. The whole world must in future understand that by Reich is meant only the German Reich. Later this month, Indy will cover Quisling's and collaborators in a special gallery episode. In any case, Goebbels' musings about the reputation of the Reich desperately missed the point. For most people in the world, there is no doubt about what is meant by the Reich. But contrary to his dreams of the awe and admiration it should instill, by now the sentiment among many is that the German Reich must be destroyed at any cost. Back in July 1941, the British Chiefs of Staff stated that we must first destroy the foundations upon which the German war machine runs, the economy which feeds it, the morale which sustains it, the supplies which nourish it, and the hopes of victory which inspire it. Now, in February 1942, a new directive shifts the focus of the Allied bomber fleet. On the 14th, the British Air Ministry issues the Area Bombing Directive. No longer are industrial targets the bomber top priority. Instead, the directive reads that it has been decided that the primary objective of your operations should be focused on the morale of the enemy civil population, and in particular, the industrial workers. But the idea that crumbling German cities would crumble German morale and the Germans' will to support the Nazi regime is a conclusion that has some problems attached to it already before the decision is made. First of all, Great Britain has lived through the Blitz and has seen Germany fail at exactly the same idea. Or as the MP for Cambridge University, Yes, they have one in 1942. Nobel laureate, physicist, and weapons researcher Professor Archibald Vivian Hill puts it in the House of Commons on February 24, 1942. Concentrated German attacks spread over many months from bases quite near at hand did, as we know, considerable damage, killed 50,000 or so persons and somewhat disorganized transport and production. It is far too easy, however, to exaggerate the loss we suffered. The total casualties in air raids, killed, since the beginning of the war are only 2/3 of those we lost as prisoners of war at Singapore. There is no question which loss was the greater military disaster. The loss of production in the worst month of the Blitz was about equal to that due to the Easter holidays. Everyone now knows that those who can do arithmetic and have an elementary knowledge of the facts knew long ago that the idea of bombing a well-defended enemy into submission or seriously affecting his morale or even of doing substantial damage to him is an illusion. It may be persisted in by those who use big and beautiful adjectives. Its futility is recognized by those who prefer arithmetic. Aerial reconnaissance and neutral observers have already told us what the facts are. We know that most of the bombs we drop hit nothing of importance. We know that German devices for leading us astray are multiplying, and the quality of their defense by fighters and searchlights and anti-aircraft guns is, like ours, improving. The disaster of this policy is not only that it is futile, but that it is extremely wasteful and will become increasingly wasteful as time goes on. Professor Hill alludes to the second problem. Already half a year ago, using aerial reconnaissance photography and operational reports, the Butt Report told the RAF and British government that hardly any of the bombs dropped over Germany were hitting their targets, often being several miles off. In fear of losing their allotment of materiel, the RAF countered with a plan based on the effects of the Blitz, showing that by carpet bombing, like the Germans did in the Blitz, they could indeed destroy German cities if given the chance. But already now, the claims in that plan are not bearing out. Just like in London, Coventry, or Belfast, the only material results are scores of dead civilians. But the RAF and British government stick to their plans, and the new direction for Bomber Command going forward is to be carried out by its new commander, Sir Arthur Harris, who assumes his new position on the 22nd. And while the Blitz is not raging over Great Britain at this point, there are German bombs falling over civilians in Russia, and once again, it is not breaking the back of the Soviet war effort, only killing more and more civilians. Leningrad has been one of the three major objectives of Operation Barbarossa. In Adolf Hitler's plans for the new German Reich, the city will be an important economic and cultural hub. In that plan, Leningrad's inhabitants do not have any place. So much so that on September 29, 1941, Army Group North receives a directive stating that after the defeat of Soviet Russia, there can be no interest in the continued existence of this large urban center. It is intended to encircle the city and level it to the ground by means of artillery bombardment using every caliber of shell and continual bombing from the air. Following the city's encirclement, requests for surrender negotiations shall be denied, since the problem of relocating and feeding the population cannot and should not be solved by us. In this war, for our very existence, we can have no interest in maintaining even a part of this very large urban population. In line with the Generalplan Ost and the Hunger Plan, which we saw the beginning of last summer, Leningrad's population is to be starved to death. Soviet supply lines into the city were cut already back on September 8th. Food and oil supplies are bombarded by the Germans, reaping quick results. The NKVD reports that 6,199 people have died in connection with food difficulties in October last year. In November, 9,183 succumbed to hunger. In December 1941, roughly 53,000 starved to death in the besieged city. And winter is just beginning. As 1942 rolls around, temperatures drop well below minus 30 degrees Celsius or minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. In January, the NKVD reports 96,751 deaths. At this point, the streets are littered with corpses. A local citizen writes, "Lots of wooden boxes have been erected and filled with sand. There's no water, so these sandboxes are all we have to fight fires with. Today, walking along the street, I saw a very old woman sitting on one of these sandboxes. She was dead. A few buildings further on another box, a dead boy slouched. He'd been walking along, became exhausted, sat down, and died." Dying from starvation is a horrific way to go, vividly described by engineer Dmitry Lazarev. "For a long time, I have wanted to write down what a person emaciated from starvation experiences. You can feel the emptiness of your stomach and convulsively swallow your own saliva. It's difficult to perform any sort of physical movement, even the most insignificant. Before turning over in bed, you take a long time to gather your strength. The morning arrives, and it's very hard to overcome your inertia, to get up and get dressed. During the day, your movements are slow and careful. Despite wearing warm clothes, you feel chilled and are dogged by an unpleasant sensation of noise in your ears. Your own breathing and speech resonate as if in an empty vessel. Your feet swell and deep cracks form in the skin of your fingers. You exist on the sidelines to everything going on around you. In the canteen, for example, you meet a friend, a colleague, and don't have the energy even to say hello. You look at him expressionlessly, and he returns the same look. Why waste strength on words?" Lydia Ginsburg, a Jewish intellectual living in Leningrad during the siege, describes the very physical process of hunger in her blockade diary. "A whole series of foul processes went on inside the alienated body, degeneration, drying out, swelling up, not like good old-fashioned illness. Some of these processes were imperceptible to the person stricken with them. He's already swelling up, isn't he? They say. But he hasn't realized it yet. Then he suddenly becomes aware that his gums are swollen. He feels them with his tongue, terrified, and prods them with his finger. He can't leave them alone, especially at night. He lies there with an intense feeling of something hardened and slippery, its numbness especially frightening, a layer of dead tissue inside his mouth." The Leningraders scramble together any food they can get. Rations are down to mere 125 grams of bread a day. Over half of that is actually sawdust. Some resort to cannibalism, although that is an anomaly. According to the NKVD, a little over 2,000 people are arrested for cannibalism by the end of 1942, the majority for eating corpses of those that had already died. In February 1942, 96,015 more Leningrad Russians die of starvation. And it does not stop there, not in the slightest. This is probably best illustrated by this diary entry of the 11-year-old Leningrad girl Tanya Savicheva. Zhenya died on December 28th at 12:30 a.m. 1941. Grandma died on January 25th, 3 p.m. 1942. Leka died on March 5th at 5 a.m. 1942. Uncle Vasya died on April 13th at 2 a.m. 1942. Uncle Lesha died on May 13th, 7:30 a.m. 1942. Savichevs died. Everyone died. Only Tanya is left. Until 1944, when Tanya Savicheva, too, aged 14, dies of tuberculosis. Never forget.